Welcome to Gab's Drams. Going to do something different today. Now, whether people like this or no, it was making me think about the education of whiskey. Now, I'm not an educationalist. I enjoy my whiskey, but I'm very interested in how whiskey's made and the history of whiskey. I must admit, I really am. So, how do we learn? Do we learn by drinking whiskey? And different drinking different types of whiskey. Is that how we learn? Do we learn by talking to people and getting information from them? I mean, I was at a tasting last night, and I always pick something up for a tasting last night. Uh, Something like we were talking about direct fire stills, and I can tell a Glenfarclas a mile away because it's a direct fire still. But there's other direct fire stills. And basically, excuse me, basically, Springbank's a direct fire still, but Springbank, it's only the wash still, it's direct fire. And I thought that was the same at Glenfarclas, but I learned last night that all the stills at Glenfarclas are direct fire. Now that's probably how I can taste this stickiness, this glowiness, this sweet demerara sugar from a Glenfarclas, but I never knew that. So you're learning all the time. So what I was going to do today is go through all my books, just show you the books that I've got, and you might think, oh, that I fancy that. I don't fancy that, and I'm going to try and go through the books. I don't know how this video will go. I really don't. But the first book I ever got when I started getting into whiskey, 2004. I hold it up to you like that, the camera. It's a wee pocket book, and it was a Christmas present in 2005. It's a tatty wee thing. My late wife bought me that, so it means a lot to me, this wee book. But the information in this wee book is unbelievable. It explains, whiskey, and it basically explains about the barley and the wheat, and it gives you the areas. The whiskey was a map, there's a wee map, whiskey, and then it's got all the distilleries. Now, it's 2005, there's a lot of distilleries closed, and there's a lot of new distilleries. But I used it as a wee reference point, and I used to write in it. So there's Bill Blair. When I got to Bill Blair, I put Blair 03, needs time, 1997, gorgeous, 10-year-old, lovely. And I used to make comments like that in it. There's a craggy moor, like, stuff like that. And as I say, that was, I've never seen anything like that, but the size of it and the information in it, and I just noticed there it was 4.99. It was a wee Christmas, part of my Christmas. So that was the first whiskey book I ever got. So the next one we're going to look at is quite a heavy book. Now, I was gifted this last year by a friend, and it's basically about whiskey, and it's called The Distillation of Whiskey. There it's there. It's very, very technical. I've read half of it, just more than half of it. It's a bit on the heavy side. It's more about in the olden days how whiskey was made, but it goes into every detail. The stills, how the stills was made up, where the nuts and bolts are, what's illegal, what's not illegal. It might interest some people. I'm finding it, I will finish it, but I'm finding it quite difficult to read, I must admit. So that's that. Another, another book I found very interesting, I've had for a couple of years, again, it was a Christmas present. It's called Johnny Walker, The Long Stride. Now, it's not just about Johnny Walker, it's about the blending and how the grocers um, thingy. So, and it's got George Patterson Walker, Alexander Walker. He was the man that really made it. It wasn't Johnny Walker. Sir James Stevenson, and it goes into Jurors and how all these guys went over the world and sold the product, blended whisky, to Canada and America and Australia. Andrew Usher, all these kind of people. It's a very interesting read. Again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I found it very, very, very interesting, I must admit. Other book I've got is an old book. My son got me this for my birthday years ago. Distilleries of Campbelltown, the rise and fall of the whisky capital of the world. And again, I found this fascinating. How all these distilleries in Campbelltown went to the wall, except one or two or three. And they were producing so much whisky, it wasn't real. And it was getting shipped out, and they were using bad barrels. That's where the fall came from. A lot of people will tell you the fall of Campbelltown had a lot to do with Speyside and the railways in Speyside, and they were getting their stuff down to Glasgow, and they were getting their stuff imported easier. As with Campbelltown, they had a problem. It had to be shipped out, or the road wasn't very good. If you read the book, you can make your own mind up. I believe it had nothing to do with the railways. I believe it was the too much. They were producing far too much. They were using herring casks. They were using all sorts, and they were really using bad casks. And that's one of the things I'm a wee bit concerned at the moment with all these new distilleries starting up. Are we getting good casks? Where is all these casks coming from? Because sherry doesn't sell the way it used to be. So are we getting proper sherry casks? Is that the reason why we're getting a lot of wine casks? Because we're starting to use wine casks. And if you're a traditionalist like myself, you maybe know into these wine casks, these red and white wine casks. You'd rather have a sherry cask or a bourbon cask. But that's how that went. The Whiskey Bible, 2019, that was given to me. Books like this go out of date. I found the reading in this very small, quite hard to read. It's good for reference. Tomatin tells you about tomatin. Scottish blends, it tells you the sales right up to 19. It's you can buy it, but I didn't think it was very interesting, I must admit. But there's information in it, and it's Jim Murray's Bible. So that was another one. Got another one I got. These things that go out of date is whiskies to try before you die. It's 101 whiskies, and these are whiskies you should try before you die. Quite interesting. A lot of a lot of whiskies I've never heard of before in it. A lot of American whiskies. I've just opened this here at 63, and it's label 5. Label 5, classic black. Kilmacombe, well, we all heard of that, Jura, black label. So it's green spot. It's just telling you a wee bit of the whiskies that they think you should try. They've got a Japanese whiskey in it. I'm not going to even try and pronounce it. There's got a couple of Japanese whiskey, American wild turkey rye. So it's quite mixed. So it's quite interesting that, I'll try that. And if you can see that in the supermarket shelves or going to a proper whiskey shop, they might have it. So 100 whiskies to try before you die. Quite interesting. Not a lot of knowledge, but just a little bit about the whiskey and why they think you should try it. Now I'm going to put this one. Let me see. This one here. I just bought this. This is just an ordinary The Whiskey Handbook. It's nothing special. By David Broom. it's got tells you a bit about how whiskey's made, and then it goes into the Highland Park, uh, potted history. It's got pictures of stills and things like that. And then it's got Speyburn and Mortlach, a wee bit about the distillery, some photos of old stuff. If you're a whiskey geek, it's worth a read, but I wouldn't say it was anything special. Ardbeg, Talisker, Glengoyne. Tells you a bit about the distilleries, but I wouldn't say it was anything special. I'm going to leave these two the last. The other one really interesting book is a Wikipedia with Charles MacLean. Now this is quite an old one, and the problem with books like this, whiskey's cause owners change, and it gives you a lot of information, you know, who owns the whiskey, what raw materials, plant, how the plant works, what the plant materials is, where they get their grain from, style, mature. Most independent bottlings of Bravo have come from ex-sherry butts. It's things like that. Now, a lot of information, and if you're reviewing whiskey, it's quite handy. At the beginning here, it's got a whiskey wheel, which I've got up behind me, and it's covered because of the light. The whiskey wheel is quite interesting. There's the whiskey wheel. I don't know whether you can see it. Bring right up to the camera. The whiskey wheel is quite interesting. And again, you can't see it because I've got a cover on it. Because sometimes at the camera angle, the light hits it. Again, my late wife bought me that, which is really nice. And it's got a chart with all the different colours, and it's got green, grassy, off notes, and it just goes round and it tells you, and then it breaks it down again. So woody, and it breaks it down to vanilla, spice, and new wood. It's quite interesting. It's quite an interesting book. But the problem is they do tend to go to date, and it's got some nice illustrations. Old distilleries and pot stills and stuff like that. Really interesting. But again, I've used that book for a long time. So now the next book is just to read again. The Philosophy of Whiskey by Billy Abbott. I've read this about 3 times, and I just could not put it down. It tells you about the rest of the world and the New World, and it tells you about Scotch, and it's a lovely light read. What is bourbon? It explains what bourbon is, the different ryes, different corons, the whiskey rebellion, and it's really interesting. On education, it tells you about Ireland. I mean, if you go into the history of Irish whiskey is fascinating. It really is fascinating how, they originally it was better than Scotch, and then we get a tax on it. They decided to use half grain and half malted grain, and then they used the pot still, which we use, but they done it in a different way. It was triple stilled. Irish, you know, fantastic wee book. And then it could push you on to go and buy something about Irish whiskey. Something I've not done, but something I was interested in. Now, the next two books I use constantly. I really do. Um, this is quite a thick book, and it's called Iconic Whiskey. Tasting notes and flavour charts for 1,000 of the world's best whiskies. Um, Alex Cyril Mad and Alexander Winter wrote this, and this has got your whisky wheel and your whisky charts. It tells you how to nose whisky, what you're looking for. Tells you about Ireland, United States, historic events, what happened, through the years. Again, quite interesting. It's quite an interesting book. The first half of it is about how whiskey's made. It's about milling, mashing, fermentation. It tells you all that, and then it goes into the coffee still. Tells you a little bit about the coffee still, which is interesting. But the bit I use in this book mainly is the barrels. It tells you about all the different barrels, and it tells you what you should be looking for in different barrels. I'll give you an example. A Manzanilla cask. So what you should be getting in a Manzanilla cask: aromas, green apple, almond, bread, salt, chalk, green olive, lemon, peat, sea spray. Lemon peel and sea spray. Oloroso casks, aromas, walnut, roasted almond, balsamic vinegar, vegetable, tobacco, fine woods, leather, truffle, raisins, dates and chocolates. So I use this quite a lot for when I'm doing reviews. So if I know something's a certain cask, I'll have a look it up. I don't copy it, but I'll look for it. Because it says it in here, I don't necessarily get it. If I get it, I'll mention it, but I do look for it. So this book, I think, won't go out of date. Shows you how to nose whiskey. We picture a lady nosing whiskey, and it explains what part of your nose and your throat it goes down. It gives you the stages. Again, I think it's absolutely brilliant. So, and then it's got a tasting guide. Now, the tasting guide is interesting, but you've got to remember whiskies change. So, if you go to the first one, Aberfeldy, and it scores the whiskies as well. It gives you a chart, and it's got a wee photo of a pineapple, um, malted barley, and it's got photographs, fruits, and all sorts. You can see that, and I find that quite fascinating. But because I do a lot of independent bottlings, you don't necessarily get them. It's got a different. There's Aaron. It's got malted milk, green banana, pear, and something else, something kiwi, which I can't pronounce. But there's another Aaron. It's a different. So that's a 10-year-old, and then the 12-year-old has got pineapple again, lychees, honey, and I quite find that one quite fascinating. I find it a really good book, which I use, and I don't think it'll go out of date. And that's a book I use for references. The other book I use for references I picked up in a bookshop, Whisky, a Tasting Course it's called. I find this a fascinating book. Absolutely fascinating. Now, a lot of these books will repeat themselves. They've got to repeat themselves. However, there's great information in them. And this one basically, again, how whiskey ages. It shows you the barrel, how it ages in the barrel of the cask. Can you see that? Let me see the yellow one down here. It shows you how it ages. And it just shows you that the cooperage whiskey tasting checklist. It tells you glassware. It talks about glassware, why we use a petite glass or the Glencairn glass against a tumbler, and it just gives you all the information. What you should be looking for. Fresh, fruity, malty, spicy, apple, and it gives you diagram. Now I find these books very educational, personally. So I would say they two books, Iconic Whisky and Whisky, A Tasting Course is my two main books. That's my two main books. The other one, I'm putting that aside at the moment. The other one I get every year. My son gets me as a Christmas present every year. I've been buying them since 2015. And it's the Malt Whisky of the Year book. Now, it does repeat itself. There's not a lot of repeating in it. However, it's up to date. As with other books, stand still. They don't move. This repeats it. This does not repeat itself. This is new. And you'll get the same information in most of it. However, there's a section in about new whiskies. There's a section in about closed whiskies. It tells you whether the owner changes. Whether that matters to a lot of people, I don't think it does matter. But I think changing the owner is interesting because a different owner will come in and do different things. For instance, I can't remember his name, but what's his name? Come to me. And he'll come in and he'll change things, and different companies will come in and they'll change things. So that's the yearbook, which I feel interesting. This is a wee book I picked up 2 months ago. David Stark, Pioneering Spirits. Tour of Scotland's 21st Century Distilleries. Again, he signed it for me. I met him at the Capleton Festival. Again, it tells you, it's got all the different distilleries, but it's the new distilleries, Turbeg distilleries, and he explains how it was built, who built it. But what he does explain, he tells you a wee bit on the way to it. And he tells you about the difference between Glasgow people and Edinburgh people. His opinion, which is quite interesting because I'm a Glaswegian that lives in Edinburgh. And some of the things he says, I just laughed because he was spot on. It's a lovely book. It's a lovely book to read. It's an easy book to read, but it's just about new distilleries. There is Ardnamurchan. He goes on about Ardnamurchan. Build your own Lochleigh distillery. I just how they were built, why they were built, Annandale, your own cask, why not? He talks about having your own cask, and he talks about the advantages and the disadvantages. One island, two names. So that's Harris, visit Harris. Great book. Scotland's most terrifying predator. I killed myself laughing when I read that chapter. Scotland's most terrifying predator. What do you think it is? It's a midgie. He's bloody a lumps out of you. So that's it. So that's the books I've got. I find them interesting. Whether you find this video of any interest, I do not know. I thought I'd do something different. I've done it during the day. I'm not drinking when I put it out. All I can say is just something to change the tone a wee bit in Gaffer Drams. Whether people will look at this, I do not know. Some people just drink whiskey. They like drinking it. Some people like me, they're geeks. We're no experts, but we like to read into whiskey and we like to challenge ourselves. So thank you for watching Gav's Drums. Please press the like button if you like it. Even if you don't like it, press the thumbs down button. It's important for these algorithms to go through. If you have not pressed the subs button, press the subs button. I need to get the subs up. And I'll go back to tasting whiskey on the next review. I've not decided when this will go out. But thank you very much for watching Gav's Drams, and thank you very much for supporting me. Bye.